There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes heavier than truth. And for Demi Moore, that moment arrived far too late. For decades, she carried the weight of humiliation, betrayal, and the quiet cruelty of the men who stood beside her both on and off the screen. Now, at 62, Demi Moore no longer speaks as the Hollywood siren she once was, but as a woman who has survived every wound carved into her by the people she trusted most. This is not a celebration of fame. It is the painful unraveling of what that fame truly cost her. Bruce Willis, The First Betrayal. The beginning of Demi Moore's downfall did not happen in a scandal or in a tabloid headline. It happened in 1987, on the night she met Bruce Willis at the Stakeout premiere. She had just walked away from the emotional wreckage of her relationship with Emilio Estevez, fragile and searching for a place to belong. Bruce arrived in her life like a force of nature, confident, charming, and burning with the wild momentum of his rising stardom. Within months, they were married, creating what appeared to be a modern fairy tale. The fearless action hero and the sensual, dramatic actress everyone adored. To the world, they were Hollywood's golden couple. To Demi, it was the beginning of a silent war she never learned how to fight. Bruce never wanted a traditional marriage. He wanted a stable base while he chased his own fame without restraint. Demi believed that stepping back would preserve the family they built together. She turned down roles, some that would later become blockbusters, focusing on raising their 3 daughters and supporting Bruce's career. He promised loyalty, promised that family came first, but his ambition spoke a different truth. He spent long months filming far away, surrounded by rumors of private parties and flirtations, rumors Demi never confronted because she feared the answer would break her completely. During the filming of Mortal Thoughts in 1991, Demi's character feared her on-screen husband, played by Bruce. What the world didn't know was that the fear and loneliness in her eyes were not acting. They came from a woman realizing she had lost herself. When they divorced in 2000, the media praised their graceful separation, but only months later Demi collapsed into emotional exhaustion and was hospitalized, haunted by a single question. Who was I married to for 13 years, a partner or a lie? In 2022, when Bruce's aphasia and dementia diagnosis drew worldwide sympathy, Demi remained calm and respectful in public. But privately, she wrote a single sentence that defined the end of her faith in love. "I don't hate him for leaving me. I hate that he made me believe my love was enough." Ashton Kutcher. The fatal blow to her dignity. If Bruce Willis shattered Demi Moore's faith in the meaning of marriage, Ashton Kutcher shattered her sense of worth. Their relationship began in 2003, when Demi was 40 and Ashton was 25, an age gap that Hollywood mocked relentlessly. Critics called it a desperate last attempt to hold on to youth, but Demi believed she had finally found a man who loved her beyond the glare of her past. She supported him in every way, using her influence to help him rise from sitcom fame to Hollywood legitimacy. She stood beside him on every red carpet, believing their connection could silence the world's judgment. But behind closed doors, the age difference became a silent predator that fed on her insecurities. Demi reshaped her life to match Ashton's youthful lifestyle. She starved herself on extreme diets, trained until her body trembled, and subjected herself to painful cosmetic procedures in a desperate attempt to stay young enough for him. She wanted to be his equal, his partner, his mirror. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not stop the natural passing of time, or the way he slowly changed when the excitement faded. In 2011, on the night of their 6th wedding anniversary, Ashton slept with a 22-year-old woman. For Demi, the wound was not just betrayal. It was a confirmation of every fear she had desperately tried to silence. 4 months later, she collapsed from emotional and physical exhaustion and was rushed to the hospital after an overdose. She had become a ghost of herself, withered by the pressure to maintain a version of youth she could no longer physically sustain. But the moment that destroyed her was a single text message she found on Ashton's phone. The words were simple, almost casual, but they cut deeper than any scandal ever could. "You were younger. You make me feel old." That sentence became the grave in which Demi buried the last of her dignity. Ashton moved on quickly, married Mila Kunis, had children, and was welcomed back by Hollywood as a reformed family man. Demi, meanwhile, was mocked publicly as a pathetic cougar, her suffering turned into cheap entertainment. Years later, in her memoir Inside Out, she wrote, "I don't hate that he cheated. I hate that I changed everything to keep someone who left me as if I was never enough." With Ashton Kutcher, Demi didn't just lose a marriage, she lost her identity, her stability, and nearly her life. Patrick Swayze, the on-screen lover, the off-screen stranger. For millions of viewers around the world, Ghost was the purest expression of love Hollywood had ever created. Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze became immortalized in the famous pottery scene, their chemistry so intense that audiences believed they shared a profound bond in real life. But for Demi Moore, that illusion was one more painful chapter in a life filled with illusions that the public mistook for truth. Behind the camera, the warmth and intimacy everyone praised simply did not exist. Patrick Swayze, who charmed the world with his charisma and kindness, kept a cold, professional distance from his co-star. Even before the film's premiere, the fracture between them had begun. When the studio organized a worldwide promotional tour for Ghost, Patrick refused to join Demi. His words were blunt and carried an edge of judgment. "I don't work well with her. She is too emotional." The statement spread across Hollywood like wildfire, branding Demi with a new label, emotionally difficult. It was a stain that would follow her for years. Worse, it reinforced an old stereotype the industry loved to weaponize. A strong female actor was a problem, while a demanding male actor was simply a professional. Demi tried to reach out after the film's overwhelming success, hoping to build a friendship based on their shared achievement. But Patrick didn't answer her letters, didn't return calls, and avoided moments that might have humanized their connection. Then came the interview in 1992. When asked about Demi Moore, Patrick smirked and said, "We worked well on screen. Off-screen, there was nothing to talk about." For Demi, this was not just indifference. It was erasure. She had given one of the most vulnerable performances of her career, yet the man who shared her most iconic scene treated her as nothing more than a professional convenience. She felt invisible, as if she had never even existed in the memory of someone the world believed was her on-screen soulmate. When Patrick Swayze died in 2009 after battling cancer, Demi did not issue a public tribute. She quietly sent flowers instead. In her journal, she wrote only one line. "The most beautiful scene of my life was shared with someone who never saw me as a person." With Patrick Swayze, Demi didn't lose a friend. She lost the comforting illusion that artistic chemistry meant emotional truth. Tom Cruise, the hero on camera, the judge behind the scenes. In 1992, Demi Moore entered one of the most demanding roles of her career, Lieutenant Joanne Galloway in A Few Good Men. Standing between Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise, two of Hollywood's most dominant forces, she knew she had to fight harder than anyone else to prove that she deserved her place on that set. What she did not expect was that one of her co-stars would become another silent judge in her life. Tom Cruise was nothing like Patrick Swayze. He wasn't cold because of ego or rivalry. He was cold because that was how he operated. He lived by precision, discipline, and absolute control. For him, every minute on set was a test of professionalism, and he evaluated everyone around him with an invisible scale that no one could see but him. Demi tried to break the ice, to find any moment of camaraderie, but Tom maintained a rigid, almost clinical distance. No eye contact outside their scenes, no shared meals, no casual conversations. She was never included, never embraced, never acknowledged beyond the lines of the script. After filming wrapped, Tom vanished from her world as if they had never worked together. Demi did not question it until the interview in 1994. Speaking broadly about female co-stars, Tom stated, "Some people try too hard to prove they are strong, but true strength comes from control." It didn't take long for people inside the industry to understand who he was referring to. Demi knew instantly. This wasn't a critique of acting style, it was a critique of her identity. She had always fought to be seen as strong, capable, equal. But to Tom, that strength was an excessive display, something that needed to be contained, judged, dismissed. The final blow came months later when A Few Good Men was nominated for multiple Oscars. Demi's name wasn't mentioned in the campaign. When asked about her contribution, Tom smiled, a polite, detached smile, and said, "I'm not sure how big a role she played in the film's success. To the public, it was harmless. To Demi, it erased everything she had poured into the role. She had survived the intensity of Jack Nicholson and fought to hold her ground beside Tom Cruise, yet she was treated as if her presence was incidental." In her journal, she later wrote, "He didn't shout, but his silence made me feel like I was always on trial." With Tom Cruise, Demi didn't lose a rivalry. She lost the right to be recognized as an equal in a room full of men who decided who deserved respect. Rob Lowe, the man who turned her into an object. Before Demi Moore became the highest-paid actress in Hollywood, she was a young performer fighting to break free from the pretty face stereotype that overshadowed her potential. In 1986, she starred opposite Rob Lowe in About Last Night, a film that would become her early breakthrough. She poured everything into the role: discipline, vulnerability, and an emotional depth far beyond what Hollywood expected from actors in their early 20s. She wanted to prove she was not just another beautiful woman on screen. But Rob Lowe did not see her effort. He saw an accessory to his own rising fame. During filming, Demi noticed that Rob treated their intimate scenes as trophies rather than storytelling. While she stayed late to rehearse dramatic sequences and refine her character, Rob spent evenings in the makeup trailer charming fans and bragging about scenes they had not even finished shooting. The difference in seriousness wasn't just artistic, it was personal. Demi understood that her reputation was fragile and she needed to protect it. Rob, however, acted as though her presence existed only to enhance his on-screen desirability. 2 years later, Rob Lowe's infamous sex tape scandal exploded in 1988, threatening to destroy his career. In his desperation to repair his public image, he began referencing the steamy scenes from About Last Night as evidence of his sexual charisma. Without permission, he used Demi's name as part of his rehabilitation narrative, dragging her into headlines she had nothing to do with. Reporters framed her as one of the wild girls of the 1980s, lumping her into a category she had spent years trying to escape. Then came the final wound. During a national television interview, Rob called Demi the ideal co-star because she always puts you in a good mood. On the surface, it sounded playful and flattering, but the subtext was devastating. He reduced her entire contribution to the film, and her entire identity as an actress, to the ability to arouse male excitement. For Demi Moore, who had fought desperately for respect in a male-dominated industry, the remark felt like a public stripping of her dignity. "I didn't shoot love scenes to turn anyone on," she later wrote. But some people only see a woman as an object the moment she steps in front of the camera. Rob Lowe recovered from his scandal and reinvented himself. Demi, however, spent years dragging herself out of the shadows cast by a reputation she never agreed to carry. With Rob Lowe, she didn't lose a colleague. She lost the right to be taken seriously during an entire decade of her life. The collapse and the rebirth of Demi Moore. By the time the fifth betrayal settled into her memory, Demi Moore was no longer the woman Hollywood once worshipped. Each man had taken something from her. Bruce Willis stripped away her belief that love could be safe. Ashton Kutcher shattered her dignity and left her questioning her own reflection. Patrick Swayze erased the illusion of companionship in art, proving that chemistry on screen could mask indifference behind it. Tom Cruise made her feel like an intruder in the very industry she helped elevate. Rob Lowe reduced her to an object, making the world forget the depth she fought to show. What united all 5 men wasn't malice. It was the ease with which they dismissed her humanity. By 2012, the accumulated weight of these wounds pushed Demi off the edge. The overdose that sent her to the hospital wasn't the result of carelessness. It was the collapse of a woman who had spent decades trying to meet expectations that no human could survive. She had lived too long carrying reputations that weren't hers, and she had fought too hard to be seen while constantly being diminished. To the world, she still appeared glamorous, poised, admired, but inside she was drowning. Recovery didn't come with applause or a triumphant return to the spotlight. It came slowly, painfully, quietly. It began with her daughters, who offered her a grounding force that fame never could. It continued through therapy and the acceptance that the girl from Roswell, New Mexico, the girl who survived an abusive home, an unstable childhood, and a relentless industry, deserved to exist without being validated by a man. Over time, she rebuilt her relationship with Bruce Willis, not as a wounded wife, but as a woman who finally understood the boundaries she needed to heal. At 62, Demi Moore stands lighter, calmer, and unafraid. She no longer starves herself for approval. She no longer fights for roles that demand her youth. She chooses projects with intention, not desperation. The 5 men who wounded her shaped the path that brought her to this moment, but they no longer define her story. Speaking their names is not an act of vengeance. It is an act of liberation. It is how she forgives herself for everything she once endured in silence. Which of these 5 stories shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold Hollywood truths.